Hi, and welcome to the next lesson in this tarot course. I hope you're enjoying. Been Hi, welcome to the next lesson. Hi, and welcome to the next tarot masterclass. Hope you've been enjoying the course. We're at card 10, lesson 11, and this is quite an important stage because we've gone around a journey of the 10 major cards. And we are going to look at this last card as the ending of a cycle, which indeed that's what that card means. But we're also going to look at the cards as a cycle from 1 to 10, with the full zero traveling around that cycle. And in order to do this, we need to, no, we don't, we need to stop this crap and start again. Hi, and welcome to the next episode of the Tarot Masterclass, which is indeed lesson 11, but it's card 10. You know why that is, don't you? Because Fool is zero. And we are ending a cycle, and it's quite an important step. We're ending a cycle. So let's start to look at what we need to look at. This is the Wheel of Fortune. And the Wheel of Fortune is the card that follows the Hermit. If we remember and think back to the Hermit, what was the Hermit doing? Well, the Hermit was actually coming out of his or her reflections, holding the torch before them, their wisdom before them, holding what they had learned and stepping into the light. And so once you've learned something, it really is almost an ending and a beginning. And if you think about that in the terms of the tarot and the wheel of life, every ending has a beginning. So we need to explore this card, um, the wheel of life. Let's put me down to the bottom so I'm not in your way and do that there, and I should vanish. There we go. So let's have a look at these cards here. Welcome to the lesson. Um, in many ways, this Wheel of Fortune card is one of the most symbolic cards in the deck, or that's arguably the case. You'll notice again with the Pamela Coleman Smith weight design on the left, there is a stark contrast to the Lady Frida Harris and Crowley design on the right. However, there are similarities. Notice that there are animals riding the wheel, as it were, and they are the same animals, kind of. Notice that also these cards have a sense of movement within them. The cards are that sorry, there's movement. in the Frida Harris design with the spiraling purple lines, there is a real sense of movement, and that's kind of important. I think the Frida Harris design kind of puts those forces of movement more clearly as always going on behind whatever is in the front of the card. And as you see in the on the notes, this card reminds me of a really famous song from a film called The Thomas Crown Affair, which the first one, not the Pierce Brosnan remake, but the very first one. And there's a wonderful song called Wimbles of My Mind, which I've actually found and put on the notes for you to read. But this card really reminds me of that. Incidentally, on that theme of songs to cards, a personal challenge for you might be to go and find songs that relate to the different tarot cards for you. Not my necessary relations with songs to tarot, which is why I've not put them in until now, but it's a good exercise to see if you can relate the cards, the specific cards, to a particular song. I'll leave that with you. And if you've got some really cool ideas, email them to me, right? I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on this. So, as ever, we're going to start by looking at the deck. And again, this slide is on every single lesson because it is so important. Put the booklet that came with your cards aside, all right, and use your journal. By now, you should have a fairly thick journal or notebook with lots of ideas and reflections, not on just what I've said, but what you've discovered in your meditations and in your explorations. Um, I was talking to somebody the other day about this, and they were insisting that the tarot was simply a tool for divination. And my opinion, as you already probably know, is that that's so wrong and oversimplifies what we have in our hands. Um, like any spiritual text, they cause us to reflect. I kind of feel that the tarot is a spiritual text. More about that later. So, if we look at the Wheel of Fortune here, this is the Pamela Coleman Smith, Arthur Waite deck. What are the things that you notice? And you may have already looked at this and made some notes, but if you like, stop the recording now and just find some notes, make some notes. Okay, so what are the main colors? Well, the main colors are blue background, which is the sky, and there are grayish clouds, and there are yellow beings with wings and a snake, or add a snake if you read my misspelling on the slide there. There's a red horned creature that's got rather the torso of a human being and the head of, well, some kind of fox or actually it's coyote. And there's orange russet disc in the middle with symbols on it. Those are the main colors. So it's gray, blue, yellow, red with this central orange or russet disc. I don't know how to describe that color. And of course, the color is going to be dependent upon the printing on the deck. Um, and so, what's the story here? Well, a wheel around which everything else is placed. There's a horned character and a serpent. They seem to be linked to the wheel. Likewise, there is a sphinx. The serpent isn't exactly sitting on the wheel, but the horned creature and the sphinx most definitely are on the wheel. In the four corners, there are winged beings, each holding a blank. Well, they are. Actually, let's say blank book, sorry for that, but each holding a blank book. On the wheel itself are the letters tarot and four Hebrew letters. So there's a T, Hebrew letter A, Hebrew letter R, Hebrew letter O, Hebrew letter tarot. And the wheel has eight spokes. And on four of them are symbols. Yeah, you can actually see that, okay? And very clearly see those things. Um, What else is there? Well, the Sphinx actually is holding a sword. The books have blank pages, and are the winged beings writing in them? The alchemical symbols on the wheel are symbols for mercury, water, sulfur, and salt. If you want to start looking up some alchemy, that would be interesting. And the words tarot are part of a cycle, rota, tarot, orat, tora, ator. And the word tarot, Tarota, is a repeating cycle, which is quite clever. Um, Google, translating those Latin words, rota, tarot, ora, tarot, says the wheel of tarot pays the Torah Ator, or praise the Torah Ator, is one translation. What is really interesting is that the most of the text suggests that rota, obviously wheel, tarot is tarot, the book of Thoth, Torah, well, that's the book of the law, and the um, uh, Jewish book of the law, and Ator or Hathor is the goddess of love. And so we can actually see there is a phrase there that maybe isn't about what it actually says, it's about what it inspires. It also suggests that the rota and the Hebrew letters are the four-letter name for God in the Jewish tradition, which is Yahod, Vehod, and that's known as the Tetragrammaton. Now, I've written on something that's coming out on the tarot course, sorry, the occult course. Why is so much Jewish mysticism tied into modern occultism and indeed tarot cards? Well, the reason being is that in the 16th century there was an upswing of interest in Jewish mysticism when actually aspects of the Kabbalah, the mystical side of Jewish teachings, was actually published and made available. And bearing in mind that certainly in Europe, we have a Christian centric spiritual tradition, and Christianity reigned, when people started to read that there was a Jewish counterpart to it and maybe older, the shall we say the philosophers of the time started to explore those writings too. And that come forward to the 18th century when the Golden Dawn was formed. Um, Tarot and the Tree of Life, the Kabbalah, became essential parts of their teaching. And the Kabbalah, of course, is Jewish mysticism, albeit the westernized version of it. Again, if you're not a member of the occult course, it might well be worth you having a look at that as well in conjunction. I think the tarot course and the occult course run hand in hand as they should be. Um, Okay, so the wheel, oh yes, the four characters could represent earth, air, fire, and water, or they could represent the four astrological signs, the bull being Taurus, lion, Leo, as an eagle, Scorpio, and angel, Aquarius. The Eagle Scorpio link is quite an interesting one. I'm not going to go through it here, but those of you interested in astrology may like to follow that through. And the important thing here is there are four characters, four elements, and therefore they're represented in four star signs, and that's kind of relevant. Um, Now, the human figure at the bottom is, it's said to be in the writings of Arthur Waite that it is a human figure with the head of a jackal or a wolf, and he's rising up on the wheel. Imagine that wheel is spinning, all right, and the character with the head of a jackal is rising upwards, moving upwards on the wheel. He is becoming ascendant, if you like. Um, Waite and many of the other people who produced the tarot said that that is a kind of um, a representation of the Egyptian god Anubis. And Anubis is concerned with truth. And if you remember or know any of your Egyptian mythology, Anubis was the character that placed the heart of the deceased on a scale and the feather um, uh, on the other side of the scale to see if whether their heart was the same weight as feather. So it's truth. Yeah. So we're reminded that when truth is on the rise, good things happen. And that's what that's about. And of course, the snake, well, the gold of the snake represents Typhon, the Egyptian god of evil. And the serpent is on the decline in this picture. So when evil is on decline, truth and wisdom is on the increase. On the top of the wheel is a blue sphinx. And in many respects, this sphinx is there to represent balance and equilibrium and holds the sword of justice. Everything that's ever has been can be judged when the wheel turns again. So there's a suggestion of the idea of karma and karmic fate here. So the angel, eagle, bull, and lion I've mentioned. If you are into cross-checking your biblical references, Ezekiel 1:10 in the Old Testament will give you a kind of interesting link there. Um, and what I'll say, yes, now the bit that I kind of think is interesting about this is the four characters in the four corners of the card are actually holding blank books, books that haven't been written on yet. Or you may like to think that these four characters are starting to write on a page in the book. Some sources, and I think particularly Golden Dawn sources, thought that of these books as being the Akashic records. Now the Akashic records, this idea that there is a space or a place somewhere in a parallel or alternate cosmos or a spiritual cosmos where the wisdom of all ages has been written. And you often hear that mystics seek to consult the Akashic records for wisdom and inspiration. I think the Akashic records are more like Jung's collective unconscious and are about sort of humanity's collection of its understanding of its spiritual nature. But we can talk about that at another point. It's the spirit plane, if you like. So this card has got a hell of a lot on it that possibly touches and rings bells. The other thing that is important is the wheel is going to be always spinning. Okay, and so when evil is on the decline and good is on the rise, or judgments, sound judgments on the rise, that's a positive omen. But of course, there will come a time when evil is on the rise and justice is on the decline. And one of the things that this card always reminds me of, and maybe you can reflect upon, is the notion that nothing stays still. And what happens in our lives is basically stuff that happens, and we put the judgment on it about whether it's good or bad, but we can never hold on to it. One of the problems you've probably read in some of my other writings that this word happiness is a really interesting word, isn't it? Because we all seem to want to be happy and gain happiness, and happiness can't be gained. Happiness actually is this transient emotion that we can't hold on to, but we can feel and express. But we try and hold on to it, and it becomes something that is fixed. And then we assume that happiness is within the things we own. I'll be happy when I get a new kitchen, a new cooker, a new. That's coming to mind because of what's happening in the home. But we get a new car, we get a new dress to wear, we get a new life, whatever that means. We pass our exams. That would make us happy. No, they won't. They're things that we aspire to, but our aspirations aren't necessarily happiness. Happiness is something that's within and something we feel. if you're interested in any of that stuff, look up my other blog, simply called Clear Mind, and you'll see lots of stuff about happiness and how happiness is a thing to enjoy, not be owned. And as with all of these cards, you've now got to dig through the symbolism, the hints at which I've given so far in this talk, and the stuff that's in the notes in the blog, and start to reflect on these things. Now, with the Wheel of Fortune, you have a hint there. What does the Wheel of Fortune mean to you? Really play with that idea. Play with the idea that when fortune shines or fortune avoids you or whatever, think about it. Luck. Think about karma. The idea of karma. What is karma to you? Okay, so start with your initial reactions, discern the symbolic references, look some of them up if you want to, understand them, and then look at the phrase Wheel of Fortune and see if you can understand why this is the end of a cycle. Put this card in the context of the previous nine. And I say nine because I'm not including the Fool, because the Fool is you that's making this journey. Okay. So with the Frida Harris Crowley deck, there's a lot going on again. We have the sort of the ever-present um, three characters, including the Sphinx on top. Um, One of the wonderful quotes that comes from Crowley himself, and it's in the book, is "Follow thy fortune, careless where it leads thee, for the axle moveth not, attain thou that." The axle moveth not, attain that. Stillness within the chaos of the universe. One of the things that I think I borrowed from North American Indian shamanic teachings, I don't like that word, but we'll talk about that another time, is the fact that native teachings focus around the idea of movement around, in the West, we call it a medicine wheel, but they call it something different, and that's another topic. But the idea that the center of the wheel is the thing that we attain. One of the great sayings from Chief Sitting Bull during this sort of the white European American rout of the indigenous peoples of the American continent. One of the things that he said was that the axle of the wheel is broken and we cannot find our centers. Finding our centers in any magical practice is what it's about. Okay, so if we look at the imagery on this card, the main colors, well, blues and golds basically, or purples and golds. We have some orange red lightning strikes, and they're where are they emanating from, above or below? They're convergent, they're cutting through things. We have the yellow golds characters and yellow gold suns, and those are the main colors. And I think one of the things I find fascinating about this um, image is that, unlike the previous image, this one gives me a real sense of motion within it. There are other things in there too, which we'll go into in a moment. But what's the story here? Well, a golden wheel upon three creatures are riding. They are definitely riding. Notice that here all the characters are on the wheel, whereas in um, the Smith Waite deck, the serpent certainly was not on the wheel. The others were. Um, and I think when we look at that, we know that they're riding wheels. Um, they're a monkey-like character, a crocodile-like character, and a sphinx. Easy to identify. There are also stars above in the top of the card. Um, the stars on the left and right, there's a certain symmetry there, but the stars themselves are five-pointed stars, but they are not symmetrical. They're symmetrical in the design, but each star is not symmetrical. And in the middle is a larger star with more points. So a five-pointed star and a large star with more points and a star above that. Come on to that in a moment. The wheel is, with the people riding on it, is circling underneath the stars. The story is that karma, that life is spinning underneath and against the backdrop of the universe. Okay. Now, this is where it gets pretty interesting in this one, and I could go into overload, but read the text. Um, the background flows with us from the center of the wheel. That's what it appears to do. And in the center of the wheel, there is a sun symbol, a solar symbol. If you look carefully, and you might not see it immediately, but when you've seen it, you will notice it. There's a triangle. Yeah. The triangle isn't in the center of the wheel, but the triangle is there behind the wheel. In fact, the triangle is there possibly behind the swirling energy. Um, and uh, yeah, okay, that's that. The star above, the big star in the middle, is a 10-pointed star. And if you notice, it is set within a flattened circle, an oblate circle, a squeezed down circle. And okay, number 10, in terms of certain kinds of esoteric sciences, is the end. 10 is the end. Because if you think about it, 10, 1, and 0 goes back to 1 again. So this is the completion of a cycle. Um, the the reason there are 10 stars there is that, sorry, 10 points that star is that it reflects the idea of completion. And the idea that the universe has become manifest and is complete, or whatever you've been journeying towards has become manifest and is complete. If you're looking at the cards as a reflection of your journey through a career, that stage of your career is now complete. You've done it, you know. Um, the Sphinx at the top also carries a sword, but it's an upright sword. Um, the Soft Tarot and Crowleyites would say that that is a sword of representing mind and willpower, and the Sphinx itself represents the power of sulfur, which is usually associated with the mind. Sulfur is associated with heat and explosiveness, as described by the Emperor card. Okay, there are links back. There are callbacks to earlier cards in this. Now, on the right is a character called Typhon, who's associated with the alchemical element of salt, death or stagnation. Um, and the symbol of salt appears on his head behind his eye. If you have a look now, a lot of this would depend on the quality of the printing that you've got, but there it was. That's what it's intended to be. Um, the yeah, yes. There's an inverted ankh on is holding an inverted ankh, which represents life, motion, in the universe, and so it's inverted implies that he contradicts the principle of life moving forward. So this is the serpentine character that we see on the Crowley deck. It's the kind of equivalent, the sort of not very pleasant, darker side of, and he's going down on the wheel. Um, on the left, there is it's a monkey god. It's Hermanubis, which is a variation of the god Anubis. And it's a monkey that's meant to be Greek in the Greek version of Anubis, combination of Hermes and Anubis. There you go. So it's to Egyptian and Greek mythology. And these two characters, Hermanubis and Typhon, are associated with the mediation between life and death. Um, they are often seen as guides for the souls of the dead through the underworld. And so that's very dark, but here we're talking about um, the idea that was expressed on the Arthurweight deck, the rise and the fall. Um, and it's quite important. Um, okay. Um, right. There's a lot more here that we need to pick up. If you look at the hand, there is a fist. I don't know if you can see that. I'll see if I can get it to shine here. There, that fist. And from that fist, right, um, are coming six rays. Yeah. They represent the number of the sun. And this is where the Kabbalah links are so useful. But that represents the Tifereth, which is consciousness. And that links back to the triangle, which is to do with um, the eye within the triangle, which I'm not going to get too hung up on that because all you Illuminati conspiratorial folk out there will see other significance in it. But it kind of implies that destiny is in our own hands, which is an interesting concept. We're not just victims of the wheel and therefore needing to ride the wheel, but we're actually, our fate is in our own hands. And if you are into palmistry, you will start to see how you can link that to the tarot and these ideas. I think the Crowley deck is um, is kind of richer in its symbolism to take you on a journey. Um, and there are great connections and symbols to you might, if you're into this symbolism, you might see the Masonic symbol within that triangle and that circle. Um, and that symbol right in the middle is the sun. It's a symbol for the sun. And I think that's quite important to start to think about that. I was going to say something else that I just need to just check I've got this right. Um, hold on a minute, number 10. Oh, yes. Um, the starry heavens above the Sphinx um, are a kind of representation of the starry goddess Nuit. And one of the interesting things here is we have this sort of um, these series of five-pointed stars, which are distorted. Now, the five-pointed star is actually the pentagram, and the pentagram is a symbol of the combination of the five elements: earth, air, fire, water, and soul, spirit. But the fact that these are distorted, well, that reflects the nature of human experience. Um, None of us are perfect pentagrams. None of us are perfect balances between earth, air, fire, and water and spirit. As we develop and grow and awaken, we become more balanced. We become more like the geometric design. But we're all distorted, and this card reminds us of that. And the symmetry in the diagram shows us that actually we can be aligned to universal symmetry. And you may just notice that in the central 10-pointed star, there's almost like another triangle connected by the silvery stars and the star above. Notice also that the starry heavens, which are the sort of numbers of stars, which are the four stars, okay, four-pointed stars, which are the elemental stars. Notice that the bolts of lightning stem from them or flow to them, depending on your point of view. And that's a reminder of this occult dictum, as above, so below. I could go on, but there's a heck of a lot in all of the Crowley cards. If you've been following this and you've been looking around the cards, you'll find a lot of imagery that triggers other connections. Okay. So when you're looking at meaning for this card, it's the same as for any tarot deck. You start with your initial reactions and then you look at the symbolic references. Now, don't try to grab too much at one go with the symbolism. Um, I started looking at these tarot cards when I was 13, 14-ish. I'm now 60 plus, and I still don't remember or understand all of the symbolism, particularly in decks like the Thoth deck. But I have an appreciation of them, and that's the important thing. And more importantly, these cards are meant not just to share what Crowley or Frida Harris, in this particular case, thought of the card and the meaning, but what they could inspire you to create by taking that meaning further. I do think that by now, if you are just thinking of the cards as fortune telling, you will not be following this anymore. I'm hoping that all of you will have realized that this is about self reflection and introspection and looking inwards. All these cards are about looking inwards. And where are they in you and in various aspects of your life? In a very simple way of thinking about this, where in your life have you completed a cycle and need to move on? Or are you going around the same cycle over and over again? People that are in codependent relationships will reach a point when they realize the relationship is not healthy, but breaking out of that cycle is very difficult. And so to recognize those cycles and to see what you can do next is important, which actually is the next um, 10, 11 major arcana cards. I'd like you, though, to start to reflect on the idea that if you only had 10 major cards to work with, be 11, the 0, the 4, and the other 10, what stories could you tell with just those? And what links all of those stories together? What is it that links the sequence through? Now, in previous lessons, I've hinted at that sequence, running from magician to high priestess to empress and so on. I've hinted at that story. Now this is the close of that story. And to move further, something needs to happen. And we'll come on to that in the next lesson. It is important that you reflect on the cards. And now you start asking questions with the cards. Ask yourself to reflect upon what each of these cards means in various aspects of your life. Put these 11 cards together, shuffle them, and pull a card out and ask a question. Where am I in my work? Where am I in my thinking? Where am I in my projects? And use the cards that you've explored to give you an answer. Remember, the cards will only reflect back at you what you already know. They may open up channels of insight, which is hopefully what they're going to do, but they can only open up that insight when you've started to really connect with the deeper symbolism. You may decide that some of the Egyptian mythology or the Greek mythology we've mentioned isn't for you. Fine. But the cards in any deck that reflects any mythology follow a similar pattern. The odd exception, I think, would be the Merlin tarot, which relies so much on Merlin mythology. It is difficult to find the sequence, but they're there. It's there. The story is there. The story in the tarot is there. Stick, though, with these two decks if you want to carry on exploring them deeper. Because once you've got this understanding of the 22 cards, you will be able to transfer that knowledge to any deck of cards. I know now that if I'm giving any tarot deck, from Star Trek tarot through to whatever, I can use what I've learned as a framework in ways of interpreting the cards I've now been given. More interestingly, I can use a deck of playing cards in the same way. And why do I say that? Well, because next month we are going to look at the minor arcana. That's the card that goes from ace with the court cards. They're more like a standard set of playing cards. And the reason we're taking a break from the majors is that I want you to spend some time reflecting on how that major cards, 0, 1 to 10, is a cycle in and of itself. The Fool encounters every single one of those cards, those situations, those influences as it goes on a journey through any project, okay, or any situation in life. But using the minor cards, we can fine tune some of this. Now, I said some time ago that we're doing a lesson a month, and that kind of means that if we're doing all the cards in the same detail, we'd be doing 78 months, and I don't really want to put you through that. So next month we're going to get an overview of the minor arcana. And once you get the way I'm going to share it with you, once you get this idea, you will see how easy it is to interpret the following set of major cards, as well as the previous set of major cards, and more importantly, for next week, how you'll be able to understand every single minor card with just in one lesson. How about that? That's my promise. In one session, next week, in one lesson, next month, in one lesson, you will come away understanding what to do with the other minor cards. Okay? So until next week, next month. I'm trying to push myself under pressure. Until next month, go well. If you have any questions, you can always email me. My email and contact details are around the place. You can contact me with any questions, and I hope you're enjoying this course. See you next time.